The first time, my stepson tried to steal my home. He was a greedy fool, and I defeated him. The second time, a corporation tried to buy my soul. They were sophisticated, powerful, and they came with a multi-million-dollar contract. They didn't want my firewood looms. They wanted my name, and they were far more dangerous. Margaret Maggie Vance, 70, master weaver. The 6 months following Julian's humiliation were a blur of sound and light. The thwack-clack of Maggie's loom was the steady rhythm under a symphony of new, louder noises, the ringing phone, the chiming email, the flash of cameras. The Philadelphia Art Quarterly story, The Weaver and the Vulture, had transformed her from a respected local artist into a national icon. She was the woman who had faced down corporate greed and family betrayal, all to protect her firewood. Her 30-foot tapestry for the museum atrium was unveiled to thunderous applause. It was a masterpiece. Critics who had once called her work craft now used words like monumental and visionary. Ben Carter, the young curator, was now the man who discovered Maggie Vance. The studio, once her sanctuary, was now a destination. Offers poured in, commissions for banks in Dubai, installations for tech campuses in Silicon Valley, even a request to design a line of luxury rugs. Maggie, overwhelmed but gracious, turned most of them down. "I am not a factory," she'd say, her hands stained with a fresh batch of indigo. "I am one woman at one loom." She was happy. The loft was hers again. The sterile white vases were gone, replaced by her colorful, chaotic pottery. The only ghosts were the ones she missed, like Robert's quiet footsteps. She was so busy she barely noticed the black sedan that began parking across the street, a woman inside just watching. One afternoon, the bell rang. Maggie opened a door to a woman that seemed carved from polished ice. She was in her late 50s, with severe, perfectly cut black hair, a white suit that cost more than Maggie's first loom, and an air of absolute, terrifying authority. "Margaret Vance," she said. Her voice was not a question, but a statement. "I am Eleanora Hayes." Maggie knew the name, Hayes Luxury Group. They were a global brand that sold $5,000 handbags and $20,000 watches. They didn't just sell products, they sold an idea of art. "Ms. Hayes," Maggie said, wiping her dyed hands on her apron. "I'm afraid I'm not—" "What is this about?" "It's about your future," Eleanora said, gliding past Maggie into the studio. Her eyes, unlike Julian's, were not dismissive. They were hungry. She ran a perfectly manicured finger over the 24-harness loom. "This is magnificent. The tension, the history. This is where it all happens." She turned to Maggie, her smile sharp. "Your stepson was a fool. He saw firewood. I see the very soul of authenticity. And I want to buy it." "I'm not for sale," Maggie said, crossing her arms. "Don't be sentimental. That's a luxury you no longer have," Eleanora said smoothly. "You're famous now, Maggie. You're a story. And a story, if not controlled, turns to gossip. You'll be last year's news, a curiosity. I'm offering you a legacy." She placed a thick, leather-bound portfolio on the desk. "Hayes Group wants to acquire Margaret Vance Textiles LLC. We want your entire archive, every draft, every sample, every note. We will create a Vance line of luxury goods, scarves, throws, home interiors. We will build a permanent, beautiful museum for your looms. And you," she tapped the cover, "will receive a salary of $2 million a year for life. You will never have to worry about a bill, a debt, or a greedy relative again. You can just create." It was a fortress of money. It was everything Robert would have wanted for her safety. It was tempting. "I need to think," Maggie whispered. "Take a week," Eleanora said. "This is a golden cage, Maggie, but it's a cage all the same. The doors just happen to be open for now." For 3 days, Maggie was paralyzed. She couldn't weave, The thwack-clack of the looms sounded hollow. 2 million a year? Her looms in a museum? A legacy? Wasn't this the ultimate victory? She called Ben Carter, the curator, and asked him to look at the contract. He called her back that evening, his voice tight with panic. "Maggie, this isn't a contract. It's an execution. I had the museum's lawyers look at it." "What does it say, Ben?"
"It says she owns you," he said, his voice raw. "Page 12, Section 4. All past, present, and future works, designs, and concepts shall be the exclusive property of Hayes Luxury Group. Page 18. Hayes Group retains final approval on all designs, color palettes, and materials." And Maggie? This is the worst part. Page 22. The artist agrees to cease personal operation of all looms, which are to be transferred to the Hayes corporate archive. They're not putting your looms in a museum, Maggie. They're putting them in a warehouse. They're silencing you. They don't want you to create. They want to own the things you've already created. The fortress wasn't for her protection. It was to keep her in. "She wasn't offering me a legacy," Maggie whispered, the blood draining from her face. "She was offering to buy my grave." She called Eleonora's office. "Thank you for the offer," Maggie said, her voice like steel. "My work is not a brand, and my looms are not artifacts. They are my hands. The answer is no." She hung up before Eleonora could reply. The thwack-clack of the loom returned, stronger than ever, but the peace was gone. A week later, the first attack came. Her supplier for the rare Peruvian highland wool she used for her commissions called, his voice nervous. "Maggie, I'm sorry. A European luxury group just bought out my entire stock for the next 3 years. I can't sell to you." A week after that, her Swedish supplier for her silk linen blend said the same. Within a month, her supply chain was strangled. Eleonora Hayes was buying up the world's supply of everything Maggie needed. She was, quite literally, unthreading her. Then, the admirers came. Wealthy, anonymous collectors began buying up her early minor works from small galleries. The price of a Vance tapestry skyrocketed. Eleonora wasn't just starving her future, she was cornering the market on her past. She was trapped. She had commissions she couldn't fulfill. She had fame, but no materials. She was an artist who couldn't art. She was walking home one evening defeated when she saw him. It was late, and a city sanitation crew was cleaning the street, their truck's lights flashing. One man, in a high-visibility vest, was sweeping the gutter, his back to her. He was thin, worn down, and moved with a weary, broken shuffle. When he turned, his face was illuminated by the streetlight. It was Julian. He saw her. His eyes, once so arrogant, widened with pure animal shame. He flinched, dropped his broom, and practically ran, disappearing around the corner. Maggie stood on the pavement, her heart pounding. She had heard he'd lost everything. Chloe had left him. His reputation was destroyed. But this was a ghost. She went home, but she couldn't sleep. She saw his face, not the predator, but the pathetic, broken man in the gutter. 2 nights later, there was a knock. Not a confident rap, but a hesitant, terrified tapping. She opened the door. It was Julian. He was still in his sanitation uniform, and he smelled of sweat and motor oil. He wouldn't look at her. I saw you," he stammered, his eyes fixed on the floor. I'm not here to ask for anything." "What do you want, Julian?" I asked, my voice cold. He heard what she's doing," he said, his voice low. "Eleonora Hayes? I used to work in acquisitions. I know how people like her operate. They don't just buy property, they leverage it. They find a debt, a weakness, and they squeeze." She's squeezing me, I said flatly. She's cut off my suppliers. I'm ruined. Julian finally looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, but for the first time they were clear. No, you're not. You're an artist. You think like an artist. You have to think like her. She's not just a businesswoman, she's a shark. And sharks bleed. Why are you telling me this, Julian? Why are you here? He took a ragged breath. Because my father loved you, and he loved this work. He saw what I didn't. I destroyed his memory. I can't let her do it too. I know how to find her weakness. If you'll let me. Maggie looked at him. The arrogant, cruel man was gone. In his place was a hollowed-out shell, desperate for one single act of atonement. It was the biggest gamble of her life. Come in, she said. For the next week, the loft became a war room. Julian, fueled by black coffee and a desperate, burning energy, sat at the dining table, his laptop open. He wasn't the man who had tried to steal the building. He was the man who knew how to. She's over-leveraged, he said on the third night, his face lit by the screen. God, she's massively over-leveraged. She's been buying up art and materials for a dozen different legacy brands, all on debt. She's being targeted for a hostile takeover by a company called Aperture Global.
What does that mean? It means, Julian said, a flicker of his old predatory smile returning. She's desperate. She's not buying your brand because you're a nice to have. She's buying it because she needs your story, the authentic artist, to prove to her shareholders that she has a future. She needs your prestige to save her company. She's not a shark, Maggie whispered. She's a drowning woman trying to pull me under. Exactly, Julian said. So we give her an anchor. The confrontation was at the studio. Eleonora arrived, this time in a severe black suit. I trust you've reconsidered, she said, her voice devoid of its earlier charm. My offer expires in 24 hours. After that, my lawyers will be in touch about your defaulted commissions. I have a counteroffer, Maggie said, her hands steady on her loom. I don't barter. You will, a voice said. Julian stepped out of the shadows of the archives. Eleanor's face for the first time showed a flicker of shock, then disgust. You, the failed son. I see. This is a shakedown. It's a business deal, Julian said, placing a file on the table. You're facing a hostile takeover from Aperture Global. Your stock is down 30%. You're bleeding. You need to show a massive win at the next shareholder meeting, or you're out. You need Maggie's name to save your own. Eleanor's face was white. So, here's the offer, Maggie said, stepping into the light. You are going to sell, to me, at cost, the entire stock of Peruvian wool and Swedish linen you bought. You will release your hold on my suppliers. In exchange, I will not sue you for tortious interference. And, Maggie smiled, a slow, cold smile. I will not speak to Aperture Global about an exclusive collaboration after they fire you. Eleanor Hayes looked at Maggie, the authentic artist, and she saw a killer. She saw a woman who had been underestimated and who had just very quietly cut her throat. You'll destroy my company, Eleonora whispered. No, Maggie said. You did that all by yourself. You just thought you could use my life's work to patch the hole. Eleonora Hayes was gone in 30 seconds. The contracts on the suppliers were canceled by noon the next day. A week later, the news broke. Eleonora was out. Aperture Global had taken over. Julian stood at the door of the loft, a single small bag in his hand. He was moving to a different city for a different job, a construction job. You didn't have to do that, Maggie, he said.
Do what?
Aperture Global called me. They offered me a job in their acquisitions department. You told them I was a ruthless, brilliant bastard and that they'd be fools not to hire me. Maggie just looked at him. You are, Julian. You just finally pointed your cannons in the right direction. He nodded. The shame still there, but balanced by something new. Respect. My father, he would have been proud of you, Maggie. He was. He just wished you could have seen it. He nodded, his throat tight. And then he left. Maggie stood in her studio. It was quiet, truly quiet. The battle for her home was over. The battle for her soul was over. She was, finally, at peace. She sat down at the 24-harness loom. She threaded the first line of new, beautiful cobalt blue wool. She pressed the treadle. Thwack, clack. The heartbeat was back. She was not a brand. She was not a legacy. She was a weaver, and she had work to do.